Judge Grayson thought he was sentencing a clueless teenager, until the defendant began dismantling the case like a seasoned lawyer. The air inside the Los Angeles County Courthouse was heavy, almost suffocating. Rows of spectators filled the gallery, murmuring as they watched the scene unfold. The defendant's table seemed far too large for the young man standing beside it, hands tucked in his pockets, chin raised just enough to show he wasn't afraid. 19-year-old Jalen Dawson faced charges of grand theft auto and resisting arrest. They were serious accusations, but the way Judge Walter Grayson regarded him made it clear that the real trial had little to do with the law. Leaning back in his chair, Grayson drummed his fingers lazily on the polished wood of his desk. He peered down at Jalen over the rim of his glasses, lips twisting into something between a smirk and a sneer. "You think you're some kind of legal expert?" he said, his voice carrying dry amusement. "This isn't debate club, kid." A few chuckles rippled through the courtroom. The bailiff, the stenographer, even the prosecutor joined in. But Jalen didn't flinch. He wasn't laughing. He had spent years preparing for this moment. Not this exact one, of course. He never planned on standing here as a defendant. But he knew the courtroom as if it were his second home. While other kids memorized basketball stats, he memorized case law. While his friends played video games, he played mock trials in his head, arguing imaginary cases against himself. His mother, Denise Dawson, had been a paralegal for over 20 years. Jalen grew up listening to her stories about prosecutors, cutting corners, judges playing favorites, defense attorneys barely trying. He absorbed everything. By 14, he could analyze a trial better than most law students, but none of that mattered to Judge Grayson. To him, Jalen was just another troubled kid. "Let's make this quick," the judge sighed, flipping open the case file. "I've got a golf game at 2. The audience chuckled again, but this time something shifted. Jalen's lips curled into a faint, almost imperceptible smirk. Grayson had just made his first mistake. No one else had noticed. Yet, the prosecutor, Mitchell Carrington, rose from his seat with the confidence of a man who believed the case was already won. His suit was crisp, his tie perfectly knotted, and his voice carried the practiced rhythm of someone who had delivered the same speech 100 times before. "Your Honor, the state will prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that the defendant, Jalen Dawson, was caught red-handed in a stolen vehicle, a 2022 Audi A6, reported missing. Just hours before his arrest, officers pursued him through downtown, where he allegedly attempted to flee before being apprehended. His fingerprints were found on the steering wheel. The evidence speaks for itself." The words landed with weight. The gallery shifted uneasily, whispering. On the surface, the case looked damning. A stolen car, a chase, an arrest. Judge Grayson glanced at Jalen over his glasses, then turned back to Carrington. "Go on." The prosecutor walked toward the jury box, his polished shoes clicking against the floor. "The defense may try to convince you this was all a misunderstanding, that Mr. Dawson is some unfortunate victim of circumstance. But let's be honest, what kind of victim runs from the police?" The tension in the room thickened. Judge Grayson leaned forward, resting his chin on his hand. Jalen remained still, unblinking. Carrington flipped through a stack of papers. "Your Honor, I have here the testimony of Officer Daniel Ruiz, who personally witnessed the defendant behind the wheel before he attempted to flee. The car was confirmed stolen, and the arrest was made by the book." Grayson nodded. "Sounds, straightforward to me." And for most people in the room, it did. The case seemed clear-cut, but Jalen, who had spent years studying trials, already saw the cracks. He remained silent, watching, waiting. Finally, Judge Grayson tapped his gavel. "All right, let's hear the defense's response." Lisa Thornton, Jalen's public defender, stood nervously. "Your Honor, my client—" Jalen placed a hand gently on her arm. She hesitated, then sat back down. For the first time, Jalen spoke. I'll be representing myself, Your Honor. The room went still. Grayson blinked, clearly amused. You'll what? I'll be defending myself, Jalen repeated, calm and steady. The gallery erupted in whispers. The bailiff raised his eyebrows. Carrington's smirk faltered for just a second before he let out a sharp laugh. This should be interesting. But no one laughed when Jalen took his first step forward. Everything was about to change. The weight of the courtroom pressed down on Jalen as he adjusted his stance, hands still in his pockets. He let the silence stretch until it grew uncomfortable, then finally spoke. Your Honor, before I begin, I'd like to confirm something with the prosecution. Carrington crossed his arms. Go ahead. You said Officer Daniel Ruiz personally saw me behind the wheel before I was arrested, correct? That's right, Carrington said sharply. And that testimony is in his report. Jalen nodded, slowly then turned to Judge Grayson. Your Honor, I move to dismiss that testimony as evidence. Grayson squinted. On what grounds? For one, Officer Ruiz never saw me in that car. In fact, he wasn't even on duty when the chase began. Confusion flickered across Carrington's face. What are you talking about? I'd like to request verification of Officer Ruiz's GPS logs from that night. If his report says he witnessed me in the vehicle, then it should match his location history. But Jalen let the word hang in the air. I have a feeling it won't. Murmurs swept through the gallery. Grayson frowned and turned toward Carrington. Carrington cleared his throat, his jaw tightening. That report was filed by an officer of the law, Your Honor. Are we really going to take the word of a defendant over a trained professional? Jalen gave a casual shrug. If the officer was where he claimed, the GPS data will prove it. If not, he let the silence finish his sentence. The judge studied him carefully, then turned back to Carrington. Does the prosecution have any issue verifying the logs? The prosecutor hesitated. Too long, the jury noticed, the gallery noticed, and most importantly, Grayson noticed. At last, Carrington muttered, No objections, Your Honor. The shift had begun. For the first time, the courtroom wasn't laughing anymore. Carrington shuffled his papers, his polished confidence cracking. Your Honor, while we wait for GPS records, the fact remains that the defendant's fingerprints were found on the stolen vehicle's steering wheel. Jalen gave a small nod. That's true. He stepped closer. But let's examine that. Evidence. Turning to the jury, he locked eyes with each of them. The prosecution wants you to believe that finding my fingerprints in a car means I stole it. That's their story. But let's think logically. Imagine walking into a department store, trying on a jacket, slipping your hands into the pockets, maybe zipping it up. Then you put it back. Hours later, someone steals it. Would your fingerprints mean you committed theft? Jurors exchanged uncertain glances. Someone in the gallery muttered. Jalen pressed on. The car in question was parked outside a 7-Eleven, hours before the alleged theft. I was inside that store with 3 friends. When we walked past the car, I leaned against it. I even opened the door. It was already unlocked. A dumb moment of curiosity. But I didn't steal it, didn't drive it, didn't take anything. He paused, then asked quietly, Does touching something make you a criminal? Carrington cleared, his throat fumbling through his notes. And while we're at it, Jalen continued, let's talk about how that fingerprint analysis was handled. He turned to Grayson. Your Honor, was the forensic specialist subpoenaed to testify? Grayson glanced at Carrington. The prosecutor hesitated, then admitted, No. So the state is using forensic evidence to convict me, Jalen said, but didn't think it necessary to bring the specialist who processed it? No cross-examination, no questions about chain of custody, no chance to test accuracy? Carrington's jaw tightened. Jalen simply nodded, satisfied. Interesting? Grayson pinched the bridge of his nose. The easy case was unraveling fast. But Jalen wasn't finished. What came next would change everything. Jalen stepped forward, his voice steady. Your Honor, I'd like to enter into evidence an official statement from the owner of the vehicle. Grayson frowned. The owner? Yes. Mr. Raymond Whitaker, the registered owner of the stolen Audi, gave a statement to police that was never included in the prosecution's filings. And I think I know why. He pulled out a transcript and read, I left my car running when I ran inside the gas station. Some kid must have jumped in and taken off, but it wasn't the guy you arrested. I saw the kid, and he was white. The courtroom gasped. That's from the original police report, Jalen said, holding up the paper. The same report the prosecution never mentioned. The arresting officer omitted it from testimony. The prosecution ignored it. Yet they want you to believe I, someone who doesn't even match the description, am guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. Carrington scrambled forward. Your Honor, this is irrelevant. The defendant was caught in possession of the vehicle. No, Jalen cut in firmly. I wasn't. I was arrested blocks away, walking home after buying snacks with friends. The vehicle was abandoned. I wasn't in it, near it, or running from anything. The only thing tying me here is sloppy police work and assumptions. Judge Grayson rubbed his temple. The case was collapsing. Jalen faced the jury. The real suspect got away. The officers found a black kid in the area and decided that was close enough. That's what this case is really about. The room fell silent. Grayson cleared his throat. Does the prosecution have anything further? Carrington's face burned red. No, Your Honor. Grayson looked at Jalen, then at the jury. Finally, he leaned forward and delivered words that would echo through the room. Case dismissed. Chaos erupted. Half the courtroom gasped in disbelief, others in relief. Reporters scribbled frantically. Jalen stood still, letting the moment settle. Judge Grayson gripped his gavel, watching, him with something new in his eyes, recognition, maybe even regret. As Jalen turned to leave, the judge called after him. Mr. Dawson? Jalen paused. You should consider law school. Jalen smirked. He already had. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed the steps. Cameras flashed, microphones thrust forward. Jalen, did you know the judge would dismiss the case? What's next for you? How does it feel to outmaneuver a seasoned prosecutor? He pulled his hoodie over his head, ignoring them. This wasn't about showing off. It was about something bigger. At the bottom of the steps, his mother Denise waited, arms crossed, face unreadable. For a long moment, she just looked at him before shaking her head with a heavy breath. Boy, you scared me half to death, Jalen chuckled. Had to take a risk, Ma. She pulled him into a tight hug. You always were the stubborn one. The cameras flashed, but Jalen didn't care. Across the street, Judge Grayson stood by his car, watching quietly. His posture was different, no longer arrogant. His face showed reflection. He hadn't expected this case to matter, but it did. Because Jalen had forced the system to look at itself. And for once, it blinked first. How many others had been convicted not by evidence, but by bias, shortcuts, and a system more concerned with closing cases than finding truth? Jalen had the knowledge to fight back. But what about the ones who didn't? This wasn't just one case. It was all of them. He knew what he had to do next. The courtroom wouldn't be the last one he stood in. Next time, he wouldn't be the defendant. He'd be the attorney. And when that day came, he wouldn't be the only one. The justice system is built on laws, but run by people. And people can change, if we make them.